We're about to dive into this incredible story, a high-stakes hostage rescue mission that's so audacious, you'd think it was ripped straight from a Hollywood script. So take a look at this, a presidential limo inside a military plane. How on earth does that happen? Well, believe it or not, this one kind of bizarre image, it's the key to the whole thing. And by the end of this, you're going to understand exactly how this car helped save over 100 lives, thousands of kilometers from home. All right, so let's set the scene. Our story kicks off in the skies over Europe on what was supposed to be just another totally routine flight. It's June 27th, 1976. Air France Flight 139 is heading from Tel Aviv to Paris. But right after a stopover in Athens, everything changes. It gets hijacked. Now, the team behind this was a mix of militants, some from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and others from German revolutionary cells. First, they forced the plane over to Benghazi in Libya to refuel for about 7 hours. And after that, well, that's when their final destination became chillingly clear. They end up landing at Entebbe Airport in Uganda. I mean, look at that map. We're talking thousands of kilometers off course. And here's the kicker. They weren't acting alone. Not even close. They were actually met on the ground by Ugandan soldiers and welcomed by the dictator himself, Idi Amin. So you see, this wasn't just some random hijacking. This was basically state-sponsored terrorism. So, once they're on the ground in Uganda, the hijackers lay out their demands, and they are crystal clear. They want 53 militants released, most of them from Israeli prisons, plus a hefty ransom for the plane. And of course, they put a terrifying deadline on it. The Israeli government had just a few days to meet their demands, or they would start executing hostages. Just like that. The clock was ticking, and it was ticking fast. Inside this old, disused airport terminal, something really grim starts to happen. A selection process. The hijackers start separating the Israeli citizens and any non-Israeli Jews from everyone else. I mean, can you imagine? It even led to this chilling moment where a Holocaust survivor actually showed his camp tattoo to one of the German hijackers. Now, over the next couple of days, they did release 148 non-Israeli hostages. But the Air France crew, all 12 of them, they did something absolutely heroic. They refused to leave. They insisted on staying with their remaining passengers. So, after all those releases, this was the number that mattered. 106. That's 94 passengers, plus that heroic 12-person crew. All of them still captive. Their lives just hanging by a thread. And what did that German hijacker, Wilfried Bouze, say when the Holocaust survivor confronted him? He reportedly said, "I'm no Nazi. I am an idealist." Just let that sink in. It's a really shocking look into the twisted thinking driving this whole crisis. Okay, so back in Israel, the government is facing a completely impossible choice. And as you can imagine, a massive debate is erupting at the very highest levels. You had two camps, really. On one side, you've got Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. His instinct is to negotiate, to do whatever it takes to save lives. But on the other side, Defense Minister Shimon Peres is arguing that if they negotiate, if they give in, it'll just encourage more terrorism down the line. It's that classic awful dilemma, right? Do you save the people in danger right now, or do you take a hard line to potentially save more people in the future? So what did they do? Well, they kind of chose to do both. They opened negotiations, which bought them precious, precious time. The deadline got pushed to July 4th. And, funny enough, part of the reason for that was because Idi Amin himself wanted to go attend a diplomatic meeting. That extension, that was the tiny window the Israeli military needed to start planning something truly audacious. But look, the challenges were just staggering. I mean, think about it. First, you have to figure out exactly where the hostages are inside that terminal. Then, you have to fly 4 massive C-130 transport planes over 4,000 kilometers of hostile territory, completely undetected. After that, you've got to somehow surprise not just the terrorists, but the entire Ugandan army guarding the place. And then, you have to rescue 106 people and get out of there before you're totally overwhelmed. If any one of those things went wrong, it would be a complete catastrophe. So how in the world did they solve these seemingly impossible problems? Well, it was a mix of brilliant intelligence and sheer ingenuity. They got detailed info from the hostages who were released. They managed to get their hands on the original blueprints for the terminal from the Israeli company that actually built it years before. They even got secret help from Kenya for refueling. And then the masterstroke. The key to the whole thing, that decoy black Mercedes, a perfect replica of Idi Amin's limo, designed to fool everyone. And so, on the night of July 3rd, it was go time. 4 Israeli C-130s, flying low and fast, touched down at Entebbe under the cover of total darkness. The plan? The entire on-the-ground operation had to be over and done in just 90 minutes. The second that first plane's cargo ramp drops, out rolls the Mercedes, flanked by 2 Land Rovers, and they just gun it towards the terminal. The trick almost worked perfectly. Almost. But 2 Ugandan sentries, who happened to know that Idi Amin had just bought a new white Mercedes, not a black one, ordered them to stop. The commandos had no choice. They had to open fire. And just like that, the element of total surprise was gone. So they stormed the terminal, and they're shouting in both Hebrew and English. Stay down, we are Israeli soldiers. The idea was to create a kind of controlled chaos, get the hostages on the floor immediately, so the soldiers could instantly tell who was a hostage and who was a standing hijacker. The actual assault on the terminal, it was over in just minutes. The whole ground operation took only 53 minutes. When the dust settled, all 7 hijackers were dead, and so were about 45 Ugandan soldiers. But it wasn't a clean victory. Tragically, 3 hostages were killed in the crossfire, and the Israeli commandos lost one of their own, the ground commander, Yonatan Netanyahu. Just a few hours later, 102 rescued hostages were back on a plane heading home to Israel. Can you just imagine that homecoming? The sheer relief, the overwhelming emotion? It was an incredible victory, literally snatched from the jaws of despair. But the story doesn't quite end there. The raid sent absolute shockwaves around the world, and the fallout was immediate. And it was huge. One hostage, 74-year-old Dora Bloch, had been taken to a hospital in Kampala before the raid. After the rescue, in a final, brutal act of revenge, Idi Amin ordered his soldiers to drag her from her hospital bed and murder her. She was the 4th hostage to die, a truly tragic postscript to this celebrated rescue. And the wider fallout was just immense. A furious Idi Amin retaliated by ordering the killing of hundreds of Kenyans living in Uganda as payback for Kenya helping Israel. On their way out, the Israeli commandos also blew up 11 of Uganda's MiG fighter jets, basically crippling their air force. Militarily, this raid wrote the playbook for modern special forces. It proved these kinds of long-range counter-terror missions were possible and directly inspired units like the U.S. Delta Force. But politically, a huge debate exploded at the UN. Was this a heroic act against terrorism, or was it an illegal violation of a country's sovereignty? And that really leaves us with one big question to think about. This whole mission depended on total secrecy and unbelievable audacity. They caught the entire world by surprise. But think about today, with global surveillance, satellite imagery, social media. Could a mission this audacious, this secret, ever actually succeed again? It's something to think about, isn't it?